My name is Arthur Pendelton. Most people who passed me on the sidewalk or saw me kneeling in the garden beds just called me Old Man Arthur. I was the head groundskeeper at the Royal Pinnacle Golf and Country Club. I wore old work boots, faded overalls, and a straw hat that had seen better days. My hands were rough, my back hurt when it rained, and I drove a rusted pickup truck that coughed black smoke. To everyone who saw me, I was invisible, just part of the scenery. But there was a time, not so long ago, when my name meant something in this city. For 45 years, I was the chief civil engineer and city planner for the entire metropolitan area. Every bridge you've driven over, every skyscraper that touches the clouds, every rule that keeps buildings from falling, I had a hand in all of it. They used to call me the Iron Rule because I never let anyone cut corners. If a contractor tried to bribe me or slip in cheap materials, I shut them down. Safety wasn't negotiable. Lives weren't negotiable. But that was another lifetime. After my wife Margaret passed away, the fire went out of me. I didn't want the meetings, the politics, the endless phone calls. I just wanted peace. So I retired quietly, took my pension, and looked for something simple. I found work at the golf club, tending to the roses, trimming hedges, and planting flowers. It wasn't about the money. It was about being close to the earth again, close to something real. You see, this land, the very ground I worked on every day, wasn't just any piece of property to me. It was sacred. When I was a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, this place was nothing but an open field. No fences, no buildings, no golf courses. Just wild grass that went on forever, swaying in the wind. Yellow dandelions and white buttercups dotted the green like stars. My friends and I would run barefoot through that field until our feet were black with dirt. We built forts from fallen branches and old boards we found by the road. We dug tunnels with our bare hands, pretending we were escaping from pirates or soldiers. At dusk, when the fireflies came out, we'd chase them with glass jars, trying to catch their little glowing bodies. And every evening, without fail, my mother's voice would roll across the field like a warm breeze. "Arthur, time to come home." I always knew exactly which direction to run. That field raised me. It taught me about freedom, about friendship, about the simple joy of being alive. But cities grow. Concrete spreads. The field became a golf course, then a country club, and eventually, land worth millions of dollars. Still, every time I knelt to plant a flower, I could feel the boy I used to be, running through that grass. That's why what happened next hurt so much. 3 months ago, everything changed. My granddaughter Sophie, smart, kind, just out of college, got her first real job. She was hired as a junior assistant to a man named Damien Cross. Damien was 35 years old, handsome in that sharp, dangerous way, always dressed in expensive suits. He was the CEO of Crossfire Development, one of the biggest construction companies in the state. And he had big plans. Damien wanted to build a skyscraper, not just any skyscraper, but the tallest building in the city's history. 90 floors. Glass and steel reaching into the clouds. He called it Olympus Tower, like he was some kind of god. And he wanted to build it right next to the golf course, on the land I loved. From the first moment I met Damien, I knew he was trouble. He treated people like they were disposable. He snapped his fingers at waiters. He yelled at Sophie when she forgot his coffee order. He kicked mud onto my boots one morning while I was planting hydrangeas and didn't even look down. He just kept talking on his phone, laughing about saving $50 million by cutting corners on the foundation. Sophie stood there, terrified, holding his clipboard. Her eyes begged me not to say anything. So I didn't. Not then. I just wiped my boots, tipped my hat, and went back to work. But inside, I was paying attention. Over the next few weeks, I watched Damien closely. He held meetings on the club's patio, right where I was trimming hedges or watering plants. He thought I was deaf, or stupid, or both. He never lowered his voice. And I heard everything. "We break ground in 2 weeks," he told a table full of investors one afternoon. The inspectors have been encouraged to overlook certain details in the soil report. One of the investors, a nervous man in a gray suit, asked, "But is the foundation really safe? I heard that area used to be marshland." Damien leaned back in his chair and laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Safe? Who cares about safe? The building just needs to stand long enough for us to sell the condos. After that, it's the homeowners' problem. Besides, I hired the cheapest geologists I could find. They'll sign anything I put in front of them." He flicked his cigar ash into the flower bed I'd just planted. That's when I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I stood up slowly, brushed the dirt off my knees, and walked over to the table. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You shouldn't build on this land. The limestone layer underneath is porous. If you dig deeper than 50 feet, you'll hit an underground aquifer. The pressure and vibration from construction will destabilize the ground. You'll get sinkholes. The building will collapse." The whole table went silent. Damien stared at me like I was a dog that had suddenly started speaking. "Excuse me," he sneered. "Did the gardener just give me engineering advice?" "It's not advice," I said quietly. "It's a fact." Damien stood up. He was tall, intimidating. He walked right up to my face, so close I could smell the cigar smoke on his breath. "Listen to me, you senile old dirt digger," he hissed. "I have an MBA from Wharton. I have a team of architects who cost more than your entire life's earnings. You plant flowers. I build empires. If you ever speak to me again, I'll have you fired. And I'll fire your little granddaughter too." Sophie rushed over, grabbing my arm. "Grandpa, please," she whispered. "Just go. Please." I looked at Damien one more time. His eyes were cold, empty. He didn't care if people died. He only cared about profit. "I'll go," I said. "But gravity doesn't care about your MBA." That night, I went home and didn't sleep. I sat in my basement, staring at the old steel filing cabinets that lined the walls. Inside those cabinets were decades of maps, surveys, reports, everything I'd ever worked on as the city's engineer. I knew this land better than anyone alive. And I knew Damien was going to kill people if I didn't stop him. So I started working. Every night, after my shift at the club ended at 5 o'clock, I went home, changed into dark clothes, and drove to the construction site. I parked a block away and walked the rest of the way, carrying my old tools, a laser measure, a penetrometer to test soil density, and sample kits. I climbed the chain-link fence, careful not to make noise, and moved through the shadows like a ghost. I took coarse samples of the dirt. I measured the water table. I found cracks in the preliminary cement work that hadn't even been reported. And one night, digging through a dumpster behind the site office, I found something that made my blood run cold, a blueprint stamped, internal use only. It showed everything. Damien wasn't just cutting corners, he was building a death trap. The steel he planned to use was grade C, the cheapest kind, brittle in cold weather. The foundation was going to be poured directly over a pressurized water pocket. And the inspector who'd signed off on the plans was a man named Davis, a man I'd personally fired 20 years ago for taking bribes. I worked in secret for 2 months. I contacted old friends at the university's geology department and sent them my soil samples. They confirmed my fears: the ground couldn't support a 90-story building. I hired a private drone operator to film the site from above. The cracks, the water seepage, the unstable soil, it was all there, clear as day. I compiled everything into a massive file. 300 pages of evidence, photos, test results, emails, financial records showing the bribes. I had proof of fraud, corruption, and criminal negligence. But I needed the right moment to use it. That moment came sooner than I expected. Damien announced a grand unveiling event, a black-tie gala at the golf club's ballroom to celebrate the start of construction. 500 guests. The mayor. The press. The wealthiest families in the city, all there to put down deposits on apartments that didn't even exist yet. Tickets cost $5,000 a plate. Sophie was working the event, exhausted and stressed, managing the check-in desk. When I walked through the door, she looked up and her face went pale. "Grandpa," she whispered urgently. "You can't be here. You don't have a ticket. Damien will have you thrown out." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out something I hadn't looked at in years, a heavy gold badge that read Chief City Engineer, Emeritus, Lifetime Access. Sophie's eyes went wide. "Grandpa, I didn't know you had that." "There's a lot you don't know, sweetheart," I said gently. "But tonight, you will." I walked into the ballroom. It was glittering: crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, champagne glasses catching the light. Damien was on stage, a giant screen behind him showing a beautiful animated rendering of Olympus Tower rising into a perfect blue sky. "Ladies and gentlemen," Damien's voice boomed through the speakers. "Tonight, we don't just build a building. We build a legacy. We touch the sky. Olympus Tower will be the safest, most advanced structure ever designed in this city. We have spared no expense." The crowd applauded. Damien grinned, soaking in the attention. "And to those critics," he added with a smirk, "to the naysayers who say we can't build this high, who say the ground isn't stable, we say, watch us." More applause. More champagne. More lies. I made my way to the back of the room, where the sound booth was set up. A young technician sat there, headphones on, managing the music and microphones. I placed my badge on his console. He looked up, confused. "Son," I said quietly, "I need you to plug this USB drive into the system. Right now." The kid stared at the badge, then at me. "Sir, I can't. Mr. Cross will fire me." "Mr. Cross is going to jail in about 10 minutes, I said. "Do the right thing." The kid hesitated for one more second, then nodded. He took the USB drive and plugged it in. On the giant screen, the beautiful animation of Olympus Tower suddenly cut to black. The music stopped. Damien tapped his microphone. Technical difficulties, folks. Just one moment." Then the screen flickered back to life. But it wasn't Damien's video anymore. It was mine. Shaky drone footage appeared, flying low over the construction site. Then my voice, calm and authoritative, began narrating. "This is the northeast piling section. Note the water seepage coming up through the cement. This material is not rated for load bearing at this depth." The screen flashed to documents, emails between Damien and the steel supplier. "Damien Cross, I don't care if the steel is weak. Just paint it so it looks expensive. We save $4 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. The video continued. More documents. Bribery checks made out to Inspector Davis. Fake geological reports. Photos of cracked cement. A physics simulation showing the tower collapsing within 4 years, taking the hospital next door with it. Damien's face turned bright red. He started screaming at the sound booth. "Turn it off. Cut the power. Now." But the video kept playing. That's when I started walking down the center aisle. The crowd parted for me like water. People whispered. Some recognized me. Others just stared. Damien saw me. His jaw dropped. "You," he shrieked. "Security. Get this gardener out of here. He's hacked my presentation." 2 security guards rushed toward me. "Stop," a deep voice called from the front table. It was the mayor. Mayor Stevenson stood up slowly, squinting at me through his glasses. "Arthur? Arthur Pendelton? Is that really you?" I stopped walking. "Hello, Mr. Mayor. It's been a while." The mayor looked at Damien with disgust. "You fool. This isn't a gardener. This is Arthur Pendelton. He designed the city's flood defense system. He built the suspension bridge you drove over to get here tonight. He wrote the safety code that's kept this city standing for 30 years. He is the most respected engineer in the history of this state." Damien's face went white. I walked up the stairs to the stage. Damien backed away from me like I was on fire. I took the microphone from his trembling hand. "I spent 33 years serving this city," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I retired to find peace in a garden. But a garden requires good soil. And a building requires a good foundation. This man," I pointed at Damien, "has neither." I turned to the screen and clicked a remote I'd brought with me. A new image appeared, a detailed simulation of the Olympus Tower collapsing, floor by floor, taking lives with it. I ran the physics models myself, I continued. "If you build this tower, it will fall within 48 months. It will kill everyone inside. And it will take down the neighboring hospital, killing hundreds more. I turned to face the investors in the audience. Your money is already gone. But if you stop now, you'll keep your lives. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, the police sirens started wailing outside. I had called them an hour before the event. Damien tried to run. He actually leapt off the stage and sprinted toward the back exit. But in his panic, he slipped, on the slick, over-polished marble floor he'd insisted on to save money on maintenance. The irony was almost poetic. The police tackled him before he reached the door. They handcuffed him right there, in front of everyone. Inspector Davis tried to sneak out the side entrance but was caught by 2 officers waiting for him. As they dragged Damien away, he was screaming. "It's a lie. The old man is lying. I'll sue. I'll..." But nobody was listening anymore. The mayor walked up to me on stage and shook my hand firmly. "Arthur," he said, his voice full of respect. "I thought you were just growing hydrangeas." "I am," I smiled. "But sometimes you have to pull a weed before it chokes the whole garden." Sophie came running up to the stage. She was crying, but she was smiling too. "Grandpa," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry I didn't stand up to him. I was scared." "I know," I hugged her tight. "You're safe now. And you're unemployed." "Actually," the mayor interrupted, "my office needs a new junior city planner. Anyone related to Arthur Pendelton is hired on the spot." Sophie's eyes lit up. The Olympus Tower was never built. The land was seized by the city and turned into a public park, a place for families, children, and memories. Damien Cross was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for fraud, bribery, and criminal endangerment. His company was liquidated. Inspector Davis got 10 years. I went back to the golf course the next day. The club manager was suddenly very polite, offering me a raise, an office, even a company car. "No thank you," I said. "I just want to finish planting my hydrangeas." For a few weeks, everything felt right. I had done my job. The city was safe. Sophie had a future. The land I loved was protected. But then, something changed. Damien was out on bail, awaiting trial. And I started noticing things. A car parked across the street from my house at odd hours. Calls to my phone that hung up when I answered. Footsteps behind me in the grocery store parking lot. I told myself I was being paranoid. That an old man's mind plays tricks. But I wasn't wrong. One evening, about a week after the gala, I finished my shift and started walking home. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. The club driveway was long and winding, lined with trees. I walked it every day. I knew every crack in the pavement. I was thinking about the field again, about being a boy, about my mother's voice, about fireflies. Then I heard it. The low rumble of an engine. Growing louder. Too fast. I turned around. Headlights. Blinding and close. A car, coming straight at me, not slowing down. For one brief second, I saw the driver's face through the windshield. It was Damien. His eyes were wild, filled with rage and desperation. He wasn't going to stop. I tried to move, but my old legs weren't fast enough. There was a screech of tires. A terrible impact. And then, nothing. They found me an hour later. A jogger called 911. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was already gone. The police called it a hit and run. They said the driver must have panicked and fled the scene. Damien's lawyer claimed he was at home that evening, that his car had been stolen. There were no witnesses. No cameras on that part of the driveway. The case was closed within a month. An accident. A tragedy. Just an old man who wasn't careful crossing the road. But Sophie knew better. She stood at my funeral, tears streaming down her face, and she looked at Damien sitting in the back row, free on bail, wearing sunglasses, expressionless. She knew. Now, she visits the park every week. She sits on the bench I helped design, surrounded by the hydrangeas I planted. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the grass, she swears she can hear children laughing. She swears she can hear a woman's voice calling a name across the field. And she remembers me. Not just as a gardener, but as the man who stood up when no one else would. The man who made everything right, even though it cost him everything. People still walk past that bench and never know. They see flowers and green grass and think it's just a park. But it's more than that. It's a promise kept. A truth defended. A boy's memory honored. And somewhere, in the evening breeze, the invisible man still watches over the field he loved. That's my story. That's what I did. And I'd do it again. Because some things are worth fighting for. Even if the fight costs you your life.